welcome to join us on stage, and Mr. Seth Taylor, Managing General Partner at Vector. And also, once again, Dr. Yun Yin, Chair Professor at Taipei Medical University. Welcome our moderator and our panelists. This is our finale panel discussion. Please kindly take your seats. Thank you. Right now, I will hand over the floor to our moderator, Mr. Dan.
Thank you. Well, that was a very informative 4 sessions that we just heard. I took a lot of notes, and to be honest, in the 30 minutes, I don't think I can talk about everything I've jotted down. It would actually take me 2 hours. But when Eric and Cecile at ITRI asked me to host this panel, I wholeheartedly agreed. Because number one, we have somebody that talks about infrastructure as it relates to openness and unlocking value of data from the United States. We have an entrepreneur, a consultant that helps us with startups and AI. And we have an expert in academia and also a practicing physician from Thailand. Why Thailand? At least why Thailand is important to Taiwan. As an entrepreneur myself, a lot of our startups in AI, in healthcare, actually look to Thailand because of the similar social and economic structure in healthcare. Right? So I thought that was really important. And then last but not least, we have Professor Yen, who I've witnessed many years at the Bio Taiwan Committee since I started attending that in the year 2018. So without further ado, gentlemen, before I go into the questions, let me just first set the stage for everybody here. So in general, I think what we can really, the audience here in Taiwan, can really benefit from is how the commercial models and how friction or go-to-market is really applied overseas, whether it be Thailand or the US. For a few reasons. Number one, as a Taiwanese citizen, we have great healthcare, right? So, for example, when my daughter gets sick, first of all, she grew up with asthma. We just went down to Veterans, Taipei Rongzong's ER. Like, it just had her checked out. That resource is not available in many other countries. Right? So I think the audience, we could really benefit from today's talk and panel about how AI is applied in other economies. I'll start with the US, I'll start with Jared. Often in Taiwan, we hear how healthcare is 20% of GDP in the US. So Jared, as an entrepreneur, I 100% fully agree with you with all the pain points that you talked about today. Right? But at the same time, what do you think will be challenges to you as you roll out Project Saturn? Because it makes sense, right? Naturally, it makes sense. It unlocks value. It helps patients. It helps doctors. But what will be challenges that you think you will face? And how long do you think it will actually take before something like a Project Saturn starts gaining scale?
It's a good question. I think systematically there's kind of we've spent, if we talked about the US, we've kind of taken a system and then we continue to build upon a system. And it's got 4 walls around it, and you have to work within it, and it's hard and it's difficult. And I think there's kind of a largesse that comes from that, like a laziness, because it's hard, and you have to fight uphill to get the system to work a little bit differently. It's actually impressed me quite a bit what's going on in Thailand and Taiwan, because those things aren't occurring in the U.S. at the same speed and the same pace. They're occurring on the administrative side. Why are they occurring on the administrative side? Money, right? There's a return on investment, and there's less of a friction of concern. So I think generally what tends to happen when we're in new technology spaces is we, like I was saying, protect versus produce. So what it takes is the scene of somebody making that production, that thing come to life, in order to realize that it actually creates value, it doesn't create risk. Or the risk is acceptable. And I think that's a little bit a part of it. Now the US has a bit of a different bag, right? If you're traditionally, and you know this well, if you're trying to distribute, I've got to go through payers or I've got to go through providers. When you're building the thing that we're trying to build, you actually don't have that limitation. You've got a multi-channel ecosystem. It's just the cost of the channel that you're going through. So how long will it take?
If you had to guess.
I mean, to fully mature something, 10 years, 15 years, to the end of my career. You know, we all take for granted Google search, but you know, if you think about it, that was 25 years ago now, right? That was a long time. So there's a lot of different things that it doesn't mean it can't explode, but there was a great quote by Bill Gates that I tend to think about a lot, and that's, I don't know if it's 2 or it's 10, I just know it's going to happen. And so you just start working with like-minded folks to start breaking down the walls, start to create the right momentums, the right places to do these things, and then once you break down enough walls, it kind of picks up its own steam. But yeah, I mean, I think we have a tendency, I think the last speaker, I said it right, you've got a lot of people at retirement age, you got a lot of people at different things, they don't want to do it differently. Well, so at some point, you're going to have to do it differently. And we have a 20% GDP relative to this in the US. That can't keep growing, right? That can't keep consuming resources. So at some point, you're going to be forced to do it differently, whether you like it or you don't. So is that 2 years or 10 years? I can't say.
Not to discourage you,
Right.
but I think 10 years is a fair assessment.
Yeah.
It's a fair assessment. Now, congratulations on so far your traction, right? I know you're doing stuff in Australia, Saudi Arabia, the US, and hopefully you'll do something in Taiwan. What has been the response that has been different in the US, outside of the US, on Saturn?
The US is a little bit of a different bag. Payers are slower, obviously, which is always an interesting bag. It does scare me a little bit when I talk to the chief medical officer of one of the payers, and they're worried about how they can avoid prescribing obesity medication because of cost, not because of healthcare concerns. Like that doesn't make me feel good, generally speaking, as just a person. And I think it'll take some time, but again, it's a like-minded approach. I think the US tends to move fast in certain respects and slow in other respects. But the biggest challenge with the US is the distribution model is fractured, right? The difference that I see when we're in Taiwan, for instance, is there's a willingness to go attack the problem and a willingness to listen, understand, and look for ways to partner. And I think, you know, if you're the US, sometimes it's kind of like, I call it the hungry dog theory, right? You're the US, everybody wants to sell things in the US. You're kind of I don't want to say the lazy hungry dog, or the lazy dog, but people bring you stuff all the time because they're trying to sell it to a large population. When you're the hungry dog or you're trying to grow, you're a lot more active, open to change, open to responsiveness. And I think in Taiwan, you've taken AI and you've adopted it. You're changing the way in which you do EHR and fire standards and a whole bunch of stuff, just like Thailand. You're adopting it faster than others, right? And you're doing it, you're not being forced to do it, you're taking it and running. And I think that's gonna serve you well into the future and allow you to export those learnings out. I think the big question is how you export that and still bring value back in the process.
Okay. Before I get to my Asian colleagues, while we're on the topic of the US, Seth, question for you. So as an entrepreneur, as a startup CEO, we've tested various models, including Gemini 3 that was recently released, right? But coming out of healthcare, Gemini 3 has done phenomenally. For the record, I am not an investor in Google, right? But we saw the stock price go up tremendously because it pleasantly surprised people at how it was able to integrate AI into all its products. So in the US, we hear about how AI is doing so well in e-commerce, right? E-commerce or all these other applications. When I say e-commerce, Black Friday at Thanksgiving last week, right? And people are expecting e-commerce, AI to really, further drive e-commerce during Christmas seasons and whatnot. Why hasn't healthcare received the same spotlight? Or maybe you may think it has, right? But what needs to happen for healthcare?
What is healthcare really newsworthy? I mean, so I think part of the problem is it doesn't have this sparkle of like e-commerce and the holiday season. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of these companies are doing things inside the healthcare rubric that is not being shared. Because in part, it's like a process. They're optimizing the payer back end. Well, it's not really, they're not going to talk about how much they're paying. We had this conversation earlier, so they don't really want to talk about it, even though they're adopting it like crazy. So part of the story is this doesn't get out. The parts that do get out are things maybe like open evidence to some degree, because it's more of a tool that's almost like a web interface, and then what happens is that they replicate that on the consumer side. So they're an alternative there for patients, where you can dial in, on this interface, same as open evidence, and then you get information about your disorder or your concerns, and then if there's something you're concerned about a lot, they'll connect you directly to a doctor to talk about it with you. So this is like the parallel of what you see on the doctor's side, but I mean, how many times you talk to your doctor and they start waxing nostalgic about like an AI tool? Like it doesn't happen. But on the other hand, it does happen in the news when they hit a valuation, it's $5 billion, or they're going to create these huge upsides, and I think that's the investment in the technology. To seeing it bear fruit will be, and I think to see like a bending of the curve on some of the cost numbers on healthcare. I think that's when the news will come out. It's too soon.
One follow-up question to that. I really liked how you talked about 85% of AI revenues in healthcare are from startups, right? At the same time, and at the same time, you talked about the incumbents trying to get into the action, right? When I think about the incumbents, Epic, right? Judith Faulkner, one of the richest women self-starters in the world, thanks to Epic, because data is important, right? So how do you foresee incumbents versus startups trying to hack away at healthcare in the administrative or the diagnosis space within healthcare?
Phenomenal question. So I think there's smart ones that have done, like Medtronic and others, they're slapping these on as quickly as they can get them because they want to maintain competitive advantage and bring that functionality to the medical system. However, especially in larger healthcare institutions, they rather work with Epic than some startup. I'm going to be honest, right? So Epic is realizing that they can incorporate that, but they need some time. They don't move as quickly as startups do. They don't have the same kind of funding on a product level basis that you get when you have a high valuation with hundreds of millions of dollars in a matter of 3 months. So they need a little more time to get those products put together. So I think what you're seeing is they're trying to pick and choose among what's winning in the space, and then they're going to invest internally on that. And the same with Medtronic. I mean, all these companies are trying to invest intelligently without rushing too quickly into a failed product area. So I think there's a win for the medical system. They get the chance to try the innovation out in a partnership model, and then as things work, they get incorporated more fundamentally. The challenge for the startups is not to become irrelevant in that next rev. So what they have to do is keep adding in more and more capability into their platforms. If they're independent, they have that ability to do more so that if they get acquired, they become part of that platform. So you're going to see a lot of, I think, acquisitions of these companies as the larger players just pull them in. That will reduce some of the innovation in those companies, but the ones behind will fill that gap in. So I'm honestly very optimistic. I think this is a very exciting time for healthcare.
I'll tell you why I ask, but I'll come back to it if I have time. So in Taiwan since 2020, there's been an office called the AI Product Office at TFDA, so set up by the government. As a result of that initiative, we've seen 60 plus AI SAMDs get approved in Taiwan. But again, I'm an entrepreneur myself, right? But less than 20% of those applications that have been approved actually have a business model. So I've been thinking to myself, is it about going at it alone, or is it trying to get in bed with an incumbent, not only just go to market, but as a way for investors or for the entrepreneurs to exit or to deploy? That was where I was coming from as I was asking that question.
Appreciate that. I spent a lot of time with Taiwan companies. Smart Labs had an accelerator program here for many years during the COVID, and we had a chance to work with them. And COVID didn't happen like it happened in the U.S. here in Taiwan, so there was more actually happening during that time here. But at the end of the day, I feel a lot of these companies, to your point, don't really have a clear idea of how they're going to sort of monetize the platform. And I think this part of the problem is it's a small country, And they really need to think about how they would monetize it in the US if they want to build to a larger market. If they're looking just to be in a local context, and presumably they would have to understand how to get relationships set up with ITRI or other government agencies. The hospitals are run in a more consistent way here. I'm always amazed at how coordinated the hospitals are in Taiwan. They're like almost centrally managed in a way. It's an equality is also quite astounding for what I can see.
There are also silos.
Yes.
That you all have been talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially that you have to get through that wall to make any progress in that context, where in the US you have more flexibility in how you might get in and out of different institutions. But then you have Epic, which is a monolithic solution that many companies are having to work with just because it's there already.
Okay. So speaking of silos and getting out of Taiwan, I want to direct the microphone over to Dr. Chachai. Again, Dr. Chai, Thailand is. I've noticed that Thailand is a very important market to Taiwanese AI startups. Okay, but as a physician and as an administrator in academia, how do you view Thailand's initiatives in AI in healthcare? In a few ways. Number one, at university academia, are young physicians being trained as part of the process? Number two, how is the government, if at all, are they going to be funding and proliferating AI SMDs? Please.
At the beginning, in Thailand, the ecosystem may not be as good as in Taiwan at the beginning. But we also have the system that, for example, in Mahidol University, we have the ecosystem that have matching between the staff and also the partner or startup from outside to come together and then solve the problem, and we provide the data and also the area, the hospital that can prove out the concept. And then we have the funding, what we call venture capital. In Mahidol University, we call it MU Holding Company. It's like a private funding owned by the Mahidol University, and also work with other venture capital to fund about like 10 million US dollar at the beginning, and then invest in the project that is potentially go to the market. But anyway, that medical AI, the key is that if you approve in your institute, its accuracy is high, but when you want to commercialize to other hospital, it's going to be facing about the diversity of the data and the clinical context. The error will be increased, the accuracy will be dropped. That's why we have
even within Thailand.
Even within Thailand, we have two big hospital, the private one. For example, we developed the AI pathology, very good accuracy in Sirat Hospital. We want to use, it's just 100 meters away from Sirat building to the private hospital. The accuracy drops significantly because they change about how they prepare for the specimen and the quality of the imaging or something like that. So we have to relearn again and to make sure that the accuracy is also okay. So that means, for me, AI will be good at the specific area, the content or the data that you train. But the context is going to be very different, because in healthcare, the context is so variant. So that means, for example, if it's not just only the imaging for the clinical outcome, like Jared said, that the data from individual people is like a context. Even though you have a knowledge from all the data that you have learned, but you have to apply with the context for individual patient so that you can make the right decision or right diagnosis for individual patient. That's why we have to combine to work with all the data that we haven't been trained. So because the medicine is art and science. The science means that we understand this patient for a long time. For me, I don't think that we have the best treatment for everyone, but we have the best option treatment for individual people, because the best treatment is you have to understand the patient to match the way we treat them, to match. So that's why AI just excellent in knowledge, but we have to work with the doctor and also another data to combine with the context and combine together to deliver the best care for individual people, not the best care for everyone. I don't think that they're gonna have that.
So speaking of data hospital silos, I will come to Professor Yin. Professor Yin, my question is going to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. Because you have two very distinctive roles. One as a Bio-Taiwan committee member, right? And as a BTC member, I think you guys have been very instrumental in telling the government to form the health data company, which they finally done last month, okay? So kudos to you guys. But at the same time, you're from TMU, right? So here's my question. So what does it take for individual silos, medical systems, hospitals, universities, to actually share data with each other, right? Because I think these gentlemen continuously talked about data silos, data silos. So what does it take? Is it about incentives? Is it about trust? Or is it about mutual reciprocal benefits?
I think the key is regulatory. You know, for physician in Taiwan, for example, they are the doctor to just like officer. They gotta pay as a government officer. They don't get much extra pay. Yeah, so I don't think finance is the main concern. Yeah, but there's so many difficulty about different health systems try to merge the other. Okay, because they use a different form. Just give you one of the example about how difficult. Under Taipei Medical University, we have 3 hospitals, main hospitals. One is private, directly owned by university. Second is municipal, Taipei Municipal Hospital. The third is the Minister of Health owned hospital, and they use a different form. So some form, they put the patient's name first. Some form, they put the patient's address, social security number first. So you have to extract these forms, but they don't allow you to change. So fortunately, there's AI. So we can extract all the information and make it the super sheet and resolve the problem. But if you go out of the TMU, you cannot exchange to other health systems like the General Veteran Hospital you just mentioned. So I think that there is a regulatory issue because so many hospitals, they're not private hospital. Private hospital is relatively easier. But once you're dealing with the military hospital, impossible. Once you're dealing with the government-owned hospital, you have a challenge. So different, yeah. That's another problem about Taiwan versus the global. I think that Taiwan is not really trying to be siloed, but the Taiwan's overprotected their data. They don't want to open their data to share. But if you look at the UK, they have a UK biobank. They allow you to approach that. Yeah, and the Taiwan's not willing to open that, even not willing to open to the industry in Taiwan. So why? Because our regulation. Our regulation really feel the genetic data or treatment data need to be protected. And you know the lawyer always, lawyer always challenge medicine because they don't like each other. So that's a problem. Yeah.
Taiwan is a vibrant democracy. Don't get me wrong, I am a huge benefit. I love democracy, but in a democratic society, you have a lot of patient groups that will challenge access to data. And Eric often talks about the UK's data bank. Jared, you grabbed the microphone. Did you want to say something?
Oh, well, I think I think one of the challenges in healthcare is we're always waiting for somebody else to do it. Government, you need to change the rules. You need to do this. You need to do that. In reality, we actually have the tools to do it. We just need people to listen to understand. So for instance, on the regulatory side, I'm not as pro UK's biobank for a number of different reasons. I mean, I'm glad they did it. They just didn't go far enough, and they're not the easiest to work with, to be honest with you, on those things. Relatively speaking, I'd probably talk about, you know, the Nordics or Denmark or something like that. who's done it extremely well, although you have a different type of data set there. But these things on EHR normalization, we can already do that, right? We can do that, and we can do it in the way that we just talked about, where you can have hospital A talk to hospital B, talk to hospital C, and GP X. All of those things are technically possible at a very, very low minimal amount of cost, about the same cost as it is to buy an iPhone. It's just that I don't think everybody realizes that. It's the same thing with, when we build models, we sit up here and we talk about AI. We talk about it as like this big blob of stuff, or one thing. In reality, it's not, right? AI's been around for a long time. And so what we tend to do in healthcare is we want deterministic model. We want clarity in the thing that we want the thing to be able to tell us exactly why it's reasoning the way it is, based upon old standards, right? Clinical standards that we created from years ago, so we can say, oh yeah, that's right, right? But do we actually care that the reasoning is right or that the outcome is right? Because you have to remember, right, if we were doing it that way to ourselves, we'd still be doing healthcare the same way we were doing it in the 1800s, in the 1900s, etc., because we'd never get out of our own loop, right? So the nice thing about AI is AI now can reason and see puzzles and connections that maybe we couldn't see, and we have to challenge ourselves both to fail and be honest about the failures, but then also say, you know what, I didn't see that before, that's pretty interesting, we should take that into account. And then we have to create architectures, and there are architectures out there that are more malleable, like a lot of people will use, and I don't go too far down the road, they'll use random forest, they use the tools out of Google Cloud or whatever, and they'll use random forest, and they're good models. But when you're talking about data that moves, and you're talking about different circumstances of data, we find that transformer models are the better way to go, right? Transformer models are the ones that power the LLMs. Transformer models are the ones that power, I don't know if anybody uses Google Maps where you can hold up, as you go to a different country, you can hold up and see the imaging. Well, most people don't realize, like, I can download that into the language I want and run it off my phone. It's not running off the cloud, right? But that's a transformer model. And so what those are pliable things that can be deployed, but deployed locally, which then allow you to address some of the problems when you go institution to institution with some of the, your points were super valid, overfitting and all the confounders, but you can adjust for the confounders in that particular way, and the model learns actually better than it did before. So I think a lot of this is the technology is moving really fast, and we have to stay caught up to it and then use the technology to fit within the regulation. And then where the areas where we're really blocked, and as a recovering lawyer, sometimes by the lawyers, then we need to have that conversation and block those blockers, right? But I think we come with solutions first and request second. And see if we can do it.
I just want to mention one thing. But it Mayo offers access to 18 years of medical data, transcriptions from doctors, full image data. You have to pay $700,000 or give them an equivalent amount of equity to your company to get that. And it's mediated. Not anyone just walk in and do that. But it's hard to understand why Taiwan would offer a similar benefit to their own companies to be able to train their models and get more accurate data and allow them to be potentially more competitive that way. Because I think it could be that the centralized data that the IHRI and other organizations have is more comprehensive than even the Mayo Clinic. So in some respects, this is an opportunity. Maybe they can make money off of this.
Seth, I'm going to ask Eric to introduce you to our Minister of Health, Minister of Economics. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, please go. So, okay. Seth, by the way, one story, just to talk about what some of the gentlemen have talked about today. In the year 2019, my company, Health Inc., we actually tried to build Taiwan, the world's first diabetes data trust on a blockchain. You're the only person that talked about the blockchain today. This is a forgotten word since AI, right? So everybody's talking about AI, blockchain is put in the back of our minds. But Jared, that didn't take off because we were the only players, participants, right? These other providers, networks weren't willing to join. Like we were basically throwing self-tracked data that you firmly believe in, outside of the hospital data, non-medical data, onto the blockchain in hopes of returning value back to the individual data contributors. But that didn't go viral because there weren't enough players, stakeholders that were in it, right? So yeah, it will take 10 years. Yeah.
Well, I mean, sometimes life is about timing, right?
Try fast, fail fast.
That's right.
Go ahead.
But I was just gonna say, I mean, if you think about it, you know, we did pretty. I've seen diabetic retinopathy at every hospital, right? Fundus imaging, which I think is great. And same thing on the radiology side. But I remember back at Google in 2015, we had developed that, and you know, it's not a joke. It's actually slightly scary. But we could actually tell you when you were going to die, plus or minus 6 months. Most people don't realize that, you know, your eyes are translucent. I can see your frontal cortex, and then the machine was actually picking up when you're going to die. That wasn't a use case that we did ever try to sell, obviously.
And that algorithm is locked up right now. So
I mean, I don't know where it's at, but it was interesting. But the point being is, at the time, though, the market was not, and this was 2015, so even 19, the market wasn't ready for AI. I think one of the benefits of LLMs and the fact that it's become this ubiquitous thing that's on everybody's phone is that the market is not only ready, they know it's coming, and so there's an openness or a willingness to have the conversation that they didn't have five years ago even, despite the fact that a lot of these technologies existed 5 years ago. And so I think that's a good thing, and it means that you have an opportunity to lean in and be at the forefront of the revolution rather than behind it. So.
I got a question for you. What, the terabytes of data that you talk about existing outside the three silos, what portion of that is owned? Like probably 60% Google and 40% Apple, or is it like, I mean,
it's technically not owned by them. So Apple, so your iCloud on your Apple device is a trusted execution environment, which is why if you lose your password, they can't find it for you. It's gone. And now it sits in what happens, everybody thinks it's actually a cloud. It's not. It goes up to the cloud and comes back down to a server. But it sits on basically a fully encrypted stack that even Apple engineers can't access.
What about when I go home, when I go to a restaurant, I know everything about my life, like just
companies. So it sits on companies, sits with Visa, MasterCard, right? Financial institutions. What people don't realize is, from the law perspective, that's all yours, and if you want it, you can have it. But they have nothing to do with it, right?
But they're also the innovators in AI itself.
Yeah, but where does the data come from, right? So you have to remember that, like, yes, they can use it for de-identified purposes and aggregated purposes, which allows them to build generalizable AI. But if you want to get to personalized AI, you have to take a bit of a different approach. I think what people don't realize is that it is actually their data. They do actually own it, and they give control or the right away for free, and they don't even realize it. And that's kind of what we're saying, is that you have an economy of extraction when you actually can create a renewable resource, and you should do that. Taiwan should be the first to do it. Thailand should be the first to do it, right? Because it's not $700,000 one shot. You get paid every query. Right, type of thing, and you should, because it's value that's being created. Every time you answer a question, there's value.
Money would be great.
Dr. Yen, so my next question is for you as a physician. As a private investor, I've invested in optometry MCI, AIs in optometry MCI, prostate cancer, software that works on discharging to help providers in the US save costs. At TMU, besides all the different solutions that we've seen in Taiwan, radiology, I think somebody was talking about 85% of AI is in radiology. Radiology, what else? Cardiology, pathology. Thank you, Eric. What else? What else is a large medical center at TMU doing that maybe we in the public haven't seen yet, but leverages AI?
Rehab, neurology rehab. Yeah, because that takes time to recovery from stroke, for example, and lots of time you need to spend at home. So the AI really helped because that including the telemedicine, and also you can guide the patient and you can give them the gait measurement. Yeah, and you can just put a metrics like you get a gait and all the data collected. So quickly, patients willing to do rehab at home because you are not far away from that. Yeah, and if you keep all the patients in a hospital for rehab, that's not possible because that takes six months sometimes, maybe 6 weeks, but that's still very expensive. So rehab is a very good one, and it's ongoing right now. Overall, I think the physician adapt the AI better and better right now. For example, the on-call, we doctors call the pajama time. Pajama time means you wear your pajama, you answer the call, the nurse told you, say, this patient so-and-so, potassium 3.0, and then you say, oh, okay, but then what's the day before? It's also 3.0, but it's lower than the normal limit is 3.2. I said, forget about it, right? This is nonsense. But with the AI, now everything, they take the nurse's response, they give you all the data about yesterday, today, and then you wear the pajama, you answer it, don't bother me. And then you hang up. Everything's the same. There's nothing wrong with that because 3.0, 3.0, no change. It's lower than the normal limit, but that's this patient. Back to the patient. So I think a physician adapted much better now as compared to 5 years ago. But a senior doctor like me, they're ready to retire because enough is enough. Yeah, but that's good. The young generation adapted. That's supposed to be, right?
So our gentleman from the U.S. notice in Taiwan we don't have a payment issue. It's universal health care, right? So you don't see as much
national
AI.
health.
Yeah. So Dr. Chidai, my question is, when you look at Taiwan, and I would assume Taiwan and Thailand are very similar in the payer system, in healthcare, education, meaning training of the doctors and whatnot. Would you say that the development in AI in Taiwan and Thailand are similar in terms of applications, in terms of usage, in terms of adoption of AI?
I think it's quite similar in terms that because when you develop the AI to want to be approved by the FDA and also go to the reimbursement process from the government, so we go to the same direction because universal coverage, if you did not put into the scheme, you cannot sell. It's really difficult to sell because most of the services is free of charge, unless you go to the private hospital. But the market may not be that big to the public. So we think the same of the ecosystem. But in Taiwan, it's more developed, more mature than in Thailand. That we have to improve and learn from Taiwan.
So gentlemen, unfortunately, I think time's up. But out of my own selfish interest, I will summarize what I think are the key topics that the four of them have talked about today, right? It's about breaking down the silos, right? Unleashing trust, democratization of data, which has to do with trust, openness on the usage of data, and ultimately, if we can crack the four that I talked about above, unlocking the value. That's how you can really generate an iterative, productive value of a cycle in AI. So gentlemen, thank you very much. I've certainly learned a lot today, but unfortunately I think time's up. So thank you all. Yeah.
All right, thank you.